country, so funds for the sector have been drying up. So it's funds definitely, but I think as I see it and what the NGOs give me feedback on, the biggest part is the engagement. So yes, the NGOs traditionally have engaged with their local communities for whom they're delivering services, but they didn't really engage with the wider population of middle class people and all. If somebody wanted to come and volunteer, yes, but now with this huge engagement with the corporate sector, while the people working with corporate sector, whether they are employees or the CSR teams, they are taking a lot of interest, are actually reviewing what NGOs have been doing, are providing their inputs. So that engagement has been widening the perspective of the NGO. So that has really helped. In addition to this engagement, and also that widens your constituency for an NGO. Because, earlier you just worked with your NGO partners and you had very little influence on people who actually can have policy influence, through the corporates, etc. So that has widened the constituencies of the NGOs. In addition, I think the skills, so new kind of skills which were not there, technology solutions to address and upscale, solution for problems, etc. So those are the new additions which are coming up for NGOs. I mean, a lot of them have started exploring how can we use technology, how can we use certain, methodologies used in the corporate sector, some of the approaches used in the corporate sector. At the same time, they also talk about, how do we sensitize people in the corporate sector, because the reality of working on the ground is very different from reality of working in an urban, office. So I think that interaction is really going to give us sort of a lot of learning in the years to come.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Just another question, Manju. So we've heard of the Digital India, the Swachh Bharat. So there are mission mode programs, and there are your own programs. So how do you strike a balance between, going and funding a mission mode program versus running what you want to do? Because that will be a tough cookie to sell to the board. So how do you handle such issues?
I told Santosh that this is a tough question for me to answer. So even before the mission mode programs of government, and I'm going to be between friends here, it's also a reality that Microsoft is a global company. A lot of our strategic visions also come at a level which has to then make sense for not just one country like India, but has to make sense for about 60 to 70 countries. And that's really where I think, as a CSR lead, Santosh, I always define my role when people ask me, what do you do? In my family, a lot of people don't really understand what I do. I tell them that I see my role as an interpreter. In some ways, even I've done that even before the 2% CSR, when a global strategy comes, which is around one theme which has to apply to 60 countries. We always take that and then try and understand what are the local priorities that we have in India. What are the things that will align closely to what we have as a global theme? Now, in specific to the question that you're asking, that if you have a mission mode project, how does do I drop everything that I've been doing before and then just take that mission mode project? So no. It's a tough battle, because sometimes even with our leadership team, when they look at a mission mode project, they would come to me and say, well, why don't we just look at 2-3 state governments and give them the funding to drive a project that they've been doing, and then to help them understand that while there are mission mode projects, there are themes that we've been working on which still stay relevant. And one smart way to do it is that my theme has always been technology, youth skilling and employability. Now, if you see that, it's not very different from what some of the things we are talking about Make in India. What we are talking about Digital India, we're talking about technology, we're talking about ensuring that one person in every household knows technology or, is digitally literate. What I'm talking about is way beyond that, because we are saying not only just digitally literate, we would have technology and then help them find a job. So there is a way that you can bring it together. I think what you need, a couple of things that you need is, as a CSR lead, you're not going to implement the projects. That's something that your non-profit partners are doing. But here's where you earn your bucks. You have to get creative about how these mission mode projects really apply to what is required by your constituents. So that's the first thing. Sit with your non-profit partner. I always do that. All my learning comes from non-profit partners. They tell me how the alignment really happens because they know the ground reality. Third, where I earn my money, really why Microsoft pays me, is then I take that, develop into a program, and I actually have to pitch it to my leadership team. Because if I don't get their buy-in, after 1 year precisely, people will come and tell me, well, what are we doing, Manju? So you have to get a buy-in, even if it means that it takes you 3 more months. There's a delay of 3 more months before you hit the ground. Ensure that you do that. And I think the fourth thing, which is a reality for a CSR lead, I don't know if Anurag is that, keep talking about your project and your partners and your impact even internally. We sometimes focus so much on talking about it externally, but your employees are a great base of support that you can have. So keep talking about it so that there is a belief in what you're doing. Because if you lose that belief, then your role, then the power or in some ways, the authority you have to be able to create new programs lessens. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Yeah, I think, to some extent, but great. I think that's fine. I think there is no perfect answers to that. It's a very controversial thing. But Anurag, again, with Mr. Karnik remark that we need to move into intercompany collaborations to see larger impact. And what are your views in, how are we looking at...
I remember this was 2014, and then also I said that I am ready to have a collaborative partnership. But the problem is that though on the table it looks very good to collaborate and work, have 6, 7 corporates come together and fund a project. But the moment you start discussing about it, and as Mansu said, take it to your senior leadership, there'll be question will be about where your logo will be, on top or bottom, left or right, which color, which will be bigger, whose name will be there in the first, as the first word there. And then you realize that it's not working. And I have seen from Capgemini side, now also I invite, if the corporates are there, I invite that let's have a collaborative project. And I'm willing to what is called put in 3% money there. That's the offer that one is making. But to get that 40% and then what is called have this discussion around कि मेरा logo कहाँ, आपका logo किधर, बड़ा कि छोटा कि दाएं कि बाएं, and that the whole then we misses the purpose of doing what we are doing today. But the collaboration is required because you can't do you can't handle the problem that we have in a country like India. You can't really reach out to every nook and corner which has the issues that one is talking about, and and you can't also influence everyone. For example, Microsoft will have their own share of spaces where which they can influence. Cav will have their own share of influence. You'll have your own share of influence. I'll have my own. But on my own, I can't reach to everyone. And so if 4 of us are a part of one particular solution, we may reach out and influence a number of other people. So there is a strategic need why we should collaborate. But, and that will require, we need to become a bigger individual and bigger corporate as far as our thought process are concerned. If we remain a limited, small, as far as our thought process is concerned, collaboration will never happen. It will happen on a seminar like this. But the moment we move to our discussion board, it won't happen. Sometimes I speak very straightforward, so you'll have to take it that way, Chief. I normally do not polish it.
I do have a point, if I can add to that, Anurag. I think, Shrikant, that's really where organization like NASSCOM Foundation and CAF Meenakshi can really play an important role, because actually, if you see, each one of you works with, Meenakshi, you said 100 corporates that you 300 corporates you work with, and I know on your project you work with many corporates. You'll have to see how will you do that, but can you then look at bringing some of these partners which are aligned, which are not in the competing spaces maybe, because that's a reality, and see what you can do about it.
NASSCOM will not be successful for the IT industries, to be very honest. He tried. somewhere you'll have to, NASSCOM will be successful when they'll bring two IT and then two manufacturing and two service sector, then they'll be successful. CII may be. But the problem then is that do they really understand what CSR is all about? Because you also have platform who, I always call it that there are network who will say that net will be mine, work will be yours, and we are going to do the whole thing. So we'll have to also look at those kind of network. But there is a problem.
So just a quick comment on that. That's something when we meet so many corporates, we keep talking about it because even, for the largest company, they give 2%. It's not enough to address the problem. So collaborations are very, very important. Despite all the frustrations and all those fights about, logo, etc., we keep on talking about it. And lately, we've been having a couple of successes. I mean, we have had 1+1 kind of, collaboration that has happened, that we have been able to pull through. But there has also been a very significant collaboration that we have worked on. All of you, those who watch NDTV, would have seen the Support My School program. Which is a program that was conceptualized by CAF and then taken to a few corporates, particularly Coca-Cola picked it up. And over the years, I mean, we have been running that campaign in collaboration with government schools, with many corporates, with many NGOs across the country, quite successfully. And we have had that, people have come in and gone back. But we also see that there are some corporates who have stayed, and then there are new entrants always who are there. But the thing is that we have had a major impact through that. I mean, we have been able to actually reach out to about 1,000 schools across the country where we have built infrastructure on sanitation, on water harvesting, on a number of other activities, libraries, computer labs, etc. And I mean, otherwise, with a single partner, there are technological inputs from many partners. We would not have been able to achieve what we have achieved there.
Thank you. I think the digital literacy program that we're running also is an example of how we're getting more corporates to work together. So I think Microsoft and Capgemini, absolutely. So the last question before I just, let you go for lunches. Yeah, I'll do that. That's my last question to the panelists. So Meenakshi, there's always been this accusation or this trend that CSR tends to be mostly urban. It doesn't reach the rural. So as an organization that gives strategic inputs into corporates and how they function, also to NGOs, quickly can you tell us how you are going to facilitate that movement from urban to rural?
So, I mean, I think we have had mixed results. I mean, there are some few, not too many, but some who started off by saying, go to the remotest area, go to the, where hardcore poverty issues or development issues are there. While we have partners who have a comfort zone, over what they can actually watch over. So we have had also partners who have said, 1 hour from our, 1 hour driving distance from our office. But by providing them, evidence of, impact, and also sharing our own knowledge, because in CAF, a lot of people come from the NGO sector. And we constantly keep sharing with them, what are the key issues. And we talk to them about, how some of the urban issues are actually symptoms of rural problems. So that process is, it's a learning process that's ongoing because NGOs have been working in this sector for a long time. Many corporates have also been working in this sector and they have very well-evolved programs, but there are a huge number of new entrants also. And I think they are accountable to within their own organizations to show impact. So I think it's also about, how do their thoughts evolve? How do they feel comfortable with the impact, etc. So that's something we have been doing on an ongoing basis. But lately, in the last few years, we have seen a movement. I mean, 4 or 5 years back, a lot of our, I would say 80-90% of our program was very urban. I would say now we have actually increased the percentage. And particularly, when it comes to corporates who want to work around their factories, a lot of times we do end up choosing the rural areas around those factories. And that has also so I think it's a matter of developing our own understanding of the complexities of the development sector issues and then finding appropriate ways, appropriate partners to address those issues.
Great, thank you, Meenakshi. One last question to the panel. Major pain points in working with or implementing your action programs. Any major pain points?
Okay, so I think what Anurag did say that as a CSR lead, one of the things for me is to look at sustainable impact at scale. And that has stayed a problem. And I don't mean it is a problem as it's a non-profit problem or a corporate problem, but as we work together, I think that's an area that I still haven't been able to find the sweet spot where I can, and you know, increasingly the leadership asks us, what's the scale, what's the sustainability of the impact? And those two questions still keep me awake at night. Every time I develop a program, that's definitely an area that I look at, how do I really, you know, address that? And I think another challenge is that personally, as a CSR lead, I really believe that I want to work with many more smaller NGOs. Sometimes the norms of the country and sometimes just the way the programs are designed, because typically CSR teams will be just 2 or 3 people. Sometimes I'm not able to work with some of the smaller NGOs which have a very small scale of work, but they're doing true innovation really sometimes happens at the smaller NGO level. I wish there was a way that I could bring these two together, and they are definitely pain points for me.
The 2, 3. One is at the overall CSR rules level. The whole idea of 5% to handle your capacity building and personnel cost is something that they need to do away with, because you can't have a 5% framework, because then you won't be able to get the right kind of team, right kind of skill set, or right kind of support to really do the kind of stuff that you wish to do. The second is the whole balance between finding a smaller, good, credible NGO and then the scale. Because just imagine a corporate with a budget of CSR budget of around 50 crore or so. And if I look at NGOs who are willing to or who are comfortable with 15 lakh budget, which means that I'll have to have more than 100 plus NGOs to work with. Just not possible with 5% overhead. I need to run an office like CAF to really do that. And your admin cost will not be 5%. It has to be much more than that. And that's where the NGOs also need to understand that, boss, we'll have to talk about the scales. Because the problem that I have, and I've been to some of the workshops where I've shared this with the NGOs, that the era of sob story is over. That देश बहुत गरीब है and बहुत सारी चुनौतियां हैं and उस चुनौतियों को handle करना है. The era of doing effective project management is there, which means that I put in X amount of money, I need a result after X number of months or X number of years. And we need to be very, very clear about it, because if corporate is giving you money, they'll be asking for certain results. And you need to, what is called, articulate those results. Those results will be in terms of numbers that one is talking about, or those results will be in terms of models that one is talking about. But those results needs to be there. And that's where sometime I feel that the other side also need to understand. And third is, which is, primarily, we have started working on that, but still we have not reached a level where both the parties can feel very happy about. And that is the trust deficit. Corporate feels that NGOs are not very clean. The NGOs feel that corporates are not very clean. They are not very forthcoming as far as meeting, discussing, and working together is concerned. So that's another area. We have started talking to each other. And fourth is, these days, looking at these issues, you have too many CSR advisories who have come into picture. And that, in a way, also muddle the whole water. Because you have too many people who have quit their jobs, suddenly became the CSR consultant, and then they act as a middleman. So at one particular place, government is saying that we are going to end all the middlemen, and then suddenly you have a middleman within the CSR space also. So that's something the corporate and the NGOs, I'll say free interface will really break that particular thing. And that's something we all should be seeking out.
Yeah, for positive time, sorry, I'm just very quick point because I'll have to take a few questions from the audience. And just think about the questions very crisp and just 2 questions. So, Meenakshi.
So I think in terms of the pain points, very quickly I'll mention a list. I mean, of 2, 3. One is the short-term commitments because, you know, a lot of development projects have a longer, require longer-term commitments. The lack of alignment with the program cycle. I mean, funds released in March for an agriculture project when there is no water and expecting results in May will not have the impact. So I think that's something, aligning planning and fund release cycle with actually the requirements of your particular interest area. And finally, the lack of investment in the capacity development of the NGO sector is also a major, major problem. I think we really need a lot of people in the sector. We really need people to have high level of skills. So I think that's, and the Act allows us to do that.
Thank you, though. 2 questions, yes.
I'm Professor Akhil Chandra. I have a question about this audit of CSR. I do not know whether 2% is a lot of funds, you know, and whether they really reach, you know, to the place where they are required. I know a lot of companies, you know, who what they do, you know, they spend this money, you know, in either educating their sub-suppliers or they educate their customers, especially in the healthcare sector I have come across. So is there any agency, you know, or any mechanism, you know, who is able to audit this tremendous amount of 2% of the money from the corporates? Is it really well utilized, or does it really percolate to the places, you know, where it is desired, especially to the weaker section and the rural areas, as you put it?
I'm sorry, sir. Is your question that are corporates doing social? So you're talking about a third-party agency actually doing an audit of all the corporates in India?
Any agency, especially, you know, which is effective in finding out whether this huge sum is really reaching the weaker section or the poor people or the rural areas where it is really desired as a social responsibility. So is there any audit either from the government or some third party which probably proves for the results for which it is intended?
So it is my understanding that IICA is mandated with that, not immediately, sir, because I think right now their struggle has been for corporates to even, a lot of corporates, as Anurag said, just started working on CSR. So they don't even think it strategically. They're trying to move it out of just a cutting a check kind of a strategy. So, but IICA will, I think, sometime or the other in the next couple of years, look at doing these audits. Right now, they're talking about us reporting on a lot of this. But inside, I mean, I can speak about Microsoft. Inside Microsoft, of course, we do not just an audit, but we have a third agency which actually is hired by, let's say, our global team, which will come into the country, into India, and then do an audit when it means audit and impact audit of what we do. So after 3 years, so we at least do 3 to 5 years with a non-profit partner, do come at about 2 years to see what have we done, what has been the impact of that, what is it that we've learned and we can feed into the other program.
So if it
that
is
we
done
do.
by the third party other than
Yeah.
the corporate,
So it'll be,
that would be probably more relevant. And
absolutely, I agree with you, and I think
in healthcare sector, I have seen that most of the they spend money in terms of training to their customers or training to their sub-suppliers. So that is not real social responsibility. So in order to make really effective and fruitful,
Every
I
company
think that
goes
there
through
has to be some
every company
audit.
goes through a audit process. Every business unit get their account audited. Same is done with the CSR also. And I'll, at this particular juncture, I do not think a third party, whether it's IICA, because right now I don't think any third party should be getting into this particular mandate. At the moment you will get into at this particular level, you lose the confidence that we are building at the senior leadership also within the corporate, saying that we should invest more in the CSR. It should be the moment you make it too governance heavy, it loses the whole charm. But the whole thing is getting audited I go through 3 or 4 audits. This morning also, when I was sitting there, I was writing mails to the auditor who are there in my office, looking at MOUs and looking at where my funds are going. And they are also trying to look at whether we are really reaching out to the right kind of people or not. So every corporate worth its soil will be doing that particular thing. And so I do not intend to bringing a third party. Let's not bring in a license Raj or Inspector Raj in this particular space also.
Great. I think
I'm very clear.
that's something that we'll think about. And we as NASSCOM Foundation also know that every company now, it's a board level responsibility, and the board has to be cognizant of the fact of the money that is being spent. So one last question before we close for lunch.
Just one addition to whatever he has said. There's a difference between actually doing CSR and actually using those funds for your own internal purposes. Many corporates say that we are doing CSR, but they have got a foundation which they fund themselves with their own foundation. Now, the roles of such foundations are actually aligned to the company's interests. Will you call it that CSR?
No, the plain and simple question is, what we really want to do. We want to really reach out to communities to help. Whether we reach out to the X NGO or Y NGO, that's not the important question. The corporates are free to come out with their own foundations, and they'll come out with their own foundation because that in a way enables them to do number of other things. CSR rule does not allow me to work with social enterprises. Having my own foundation, I can do some of the work that I wish to do. The CSR rule does not allow me to create a model in a for-profit space. Having my own foundation, I can always do and create that particular model and then use it for replication with other NGOs. Let's not look at what is called the work being done by CSR from a lens that I don't think I agree to what you are doing, or I don't think if it's not coming to me, that means that it's not reaching out anywhere else. There are a number of NGOs who really are working with these corporates. There are NGOs who have changed, transformed their way of working also. And there are NGOs who have not received the fund also. So but at the same time, that doesn't mean that the corporates who have not given fund to you, they are not working with the right kind of NGOs. They are doing their own due diligence to do that particular thing. One need to really understand what, as Manju said, that the kind of mails that you write, and there are mails which will really click, there are mails which will not click, there are processes that you will have, there are processes that corporates are seeking. If those matches, they'll work in fund with you. Because if I look at my role, I cannot survive without working with NGOs. I am of no use if I am not working with NGOs. And I work with around 40 plus NGOs. And that eats away all my time. If I am here also, the aim is to meet some more NGOs. Because I'm looking at the interest is to meet. But if you start with कि जो तुमको पसंद वही बात करेंगे, then no one is interested. Because I'm looking at NGOs who are strong in the ideology side, who are strong in the work that they are doing. I'm not looking at a subcontractor. I'm not looking at people who will do anything and everything that I'm seeking or I'm asking them to do. I'm looking at someone who has their own dream, who has their own aspiration, and who are looking for some fund to really achieve those things.
Thank you, Anurag. I think that's about it. So, apologies for eating into your lunch. I think we had a good discussion here. I'd like to thank the panelists for patiently taking questions. Thank you.